Thank you for tuning in to another live edition of the OFN Today on the Ourlads Football Network for this. Actually, it's a Thursday, May 8th, 2025, and we're still fresh in our minds from the NFL draft. So we have a lot to talk about here today, including the New York Giants. Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post, NFL writer, is going to join me he's probably going to pop in the third segment. Our second segment is to cover the trade between the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers, with George Pickens going to the Cowboys. RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys will let us know what's going on from the Dallas Cowboys perspective. But we're going to start off, get into a little bit of scouting. Why not? And also, obviously, since we have Jon Cooper here, the Associate GM of Ourlads and NFL Scout, we're going to find out what he thinks about the New York Giants draft class as well, including some of the top value players from the NFL draft. How's it going, John?
Good, real good.
A little bit re-energized after a crazy couple of months?
Yeah, somewhat. It's just it's kind of coming down. It was a week of taking a deep breath and, and then, doing some things, playing a little golf.
Yeah, right. Because you got to get gearing up for the 2026 draft real soon. So,
right.
Yeah. All right. So let's get right into it with the Giants. Let's take a look at their draft class here. And obviously the big move we're going to get to in just a second. But Andre Carter, we kind of figured this was going to be the move all along. This makes a lot of sense.
Oh, yeah. Abdul Carter is a terrific football player. I mean, there's some that think he might have been the top player in the draft. We were right there, at least number 2. He's a guy who's a former off-the-ball linebacker, which made the transition to the edge this year, and it was a terrific transition. I mean, we watched him the whole year, and when I first saw, I'd say maybe the first 3 or 4 games, I wasn't overly excited about the move. I thought he was a really good off-the-ball linebacker. Hated to see him playing so much on the edge when he can chase so well. Mid-season, he started to really get better with that first step in the pass rush, using his hands, technique, things like that. And it was a remarkable improvement. By the second half of the season, he was the best edge rusher in the country. And that's with a half season of learning, playing the position, and then all of a sudden by the end of the year, you could really see a really instinctive football player on the edge, guy that can play the run, he can stack and shed, he can chase across the field. You can still see the off-the-ball linebacker traits with his ability to chase across the field, with his pursuit angles. This is a terrific football player that the Giants got, and we think he's going to be, a guy for a long time, that he's going to be making plays in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Giant fan, you do have to be excited about the prospects of Abdul Carter, Brian Burns. You have Dexter Lawrence, probably the best interior defensive tackle as far as being able to rush the passer. I mean, obviously you have Chris Jones, but Dexter Lawrence is a completely different type of player. And then Thibodeau as well. I mean, just imagine if he can stay healthy and take that next step. I mean, they've got something really exciting that they're building there.
Abdul Carter, reminiscent a little bit of Lawrence Taylor. So the Giant fans have
can only hope
forward to.
Yeah. All right. So then they make the controversial big move, and there were a lot of people who seemed to think that this was a great move. Matter of fact, there were a lot of people who put the Giants as an A or an A+ grade in the draft. Matter of fact, Ryan Dunleavy's one of them. I'm going to talk to him in a little bit, and he's probably as much as a critic of the Giants as anybody, and that's what the media is about. But on our side, I know that we didn't really value Jackson Dart that highly. So what did you think when you heard the move? Not surprising, of course, that the Giants had moved up to acquire Dart. So give me the pros and cons of this move.
Well, I've seen this before, with teams moving up in the draft to get that 5th year of, especially with a developmental quarterback. You saw it with Lamar Jackson. You've seen it with, you saw with Jordan Love. So, this is not a surprising move for a team that needs a quarterback. The surprise may have been who the quarterback was. We didn't value Dart that high, but understand this. The draft has 2 drafts. It's got the quarterback draft and it's got everybody else. And so you're going to value quarterbacks differently for the simple reason that they're quarterbacks and they are so important to to the success of an NFL football team. So Dart is a potentially solid quarterback. I think we had third round on him somewhere in there, late second, third. And he was our third-ranked quarterback. We like him. There's a lot of things to like. There's some things that we don't like too. But he makes all the throws. He's an athlete. He can move. He can create with his feet. Ole Miss quarterbacks from that system, or from the Lane Kiffin system, there's some issues with that.
Yep.
One read, typically horizontal, vertical. You're not reading the triangle like NFL teams they want them to do. So Dart has some work to do. He's a developmental guy for the NFL. He's got the tools. He's got the talent. So that's, from that perspective, it's a very understandable pick for the Giants because they have quarterbacks in the room already. They don't have to throw Dart to the wolves, and I never think it's a great idea to do that, although some teams have been very successful doing that, a la Jaden Daniels. But, Dart's going to probably sit for a while. He's going to learn. He's going to have an opportunity to develop into an NFL quarterback. The only thing that bothered us a little bit, and probably downgraded him for, maybe not fairly, he had some hiccups at the end of the year in terms of under pressure, making
Florida game
under
especially.
pressure.
Yeah.
And that bothered us.
Yeah.
I'd say those last three games, when it got down to the nitty gritty for them, he didn't perform up to the capabilities we think he should have. And, that was a little bit of a concern. Now, perfect reason why you take a guy as a developmental quarterback to work with him. Obviously, the Giants liked what they saw, think this is a kid who's got, some good character, a good kid to work with, a good kid to develop. So you can't knock them for that. They know what they're doing a lot better than we do in terms of what they need in their quarterback room. So hey, we'll see what happens in the next 3 years.
And I think you hit it on the head as far as the developmental part, because especially with the Giants, they not only have a veteran starter, but they have a veteran backup. And that's also very important. We know what happened I was just going over the Justin Fields bio highlights a couple of days ago when I was talking Jets football with Matthew O'Leary, and taking a look at Fields and remembering their strategy was, well, we've got Andy Dalton. Yeah, but Andy Dalton gets hurt after 2 games, and then who has to step in but Justin Fields, because you didn't have a backup. You didn't have a veteran backup. So at least if something happens to Russell Wilson, you don't have to go to Jackson Dart. You go to Jameis Winston, and Dart remains on the sidelines where he belongs in the first season. Yeah,
for sure. And again, if you want to, we look at the Chicago Bears, and we feel that, we didn't like what they did last year in taking a quarterback that we felt was developmental and not having a veteran backup in the room at all. A Division II kid who's a nice athlete, was his backup. And, now they've upgraded that situation there. So for them, so that was a good move. But I didn't like what they did last year in terms of not only the pick. We like Jaden Daniels better, but not only that, but not having someone to help him develop.
Yep. Well, they've got the hot toy coach now, Ben Johnson. So,
well, I think they're going to get better for sure.
Yes, Williams could not. I mean, he hit the lottery, and if he can't develop now, then there's no hope for him. Okay, let's talk about pick number 3. That was their third-round pick, first pick in the third round, and a defensive tackle, Darius Alexander, that really started making a name for himself during Senior Bowl week.
Yeah, and that's what people noticed about him. He looked very good in the Senior Bowl in those one-on-ones, and he had a good week. As far as the overall grade, when we look at him, we probably were down on him a little bit lower on that. We see him as a rotational defender. He's got a lot of flash. He uses his hands very well. He's a guy that can play 5 technique. He's versatile. We think he's going to be a part of a rotation. He's a rotational player. We think he's got 3-down potential. But the Giants are building a rotation like a lot of great NFL teams do. So they're not looking to Darius Alexander to step in and play 70 snaps or 60 snaps. They're looking at a guy to play 30 to 40 snaps that can fit into a rotation and be very successful in that role. And we think that's where he's going to be good. You can move him around a little bit inside. He's going to be primarily a 3 technique. But he's a guy that We think he's got a good future. He can develop into a better player than he is. He's playing in the MAC conference, so he didn't see the
Yep.
competition week in and week out that some of these other guys in a very, very good interior defender class saw. So, there's a little bit of concern there. We like him. We think he can develop into a really good rotational defensive tackle.
Okay. Round 4, the name Scatterboo sure became pretty popular around playoff time last year in college football. I don't think any player made a bigger impact during the playoffs. Maybe Howard. Even that didn't help him in the draft. But Scatterboo had that incredible performance against Texas in a losing effort, but it really helped his draft stock. So what do you think about the pickup there?
Oh, I really like him a lot. We've got some people that are close to the Arizona State situation that work for us, and so they're out there and they've seen him play. They've been to practices and they've seen him at practice, and nothing but positives about this guy. I mean, obviously he's not the greatest athlete in the world. He's got that Mike Allstat type mentality in terms of he's going to run over you, and if you're he's got a yard to go and there's a one-on-one situation, I'm going to bet on him every time. That doesn't mean he's going to do it every time, but that's the guy that I think I want carrying the ball with a yard to go. Tremendous effort player. He's got surprising agility in traffic for what you see in a player. He can take the ball. He can make you miss in space. He can run over you. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not the greatest athlete, but he's got good hands as a receiver out of the backfield. He's a good power runner. He hits the hole. He's got good instincts. His slide and pick is excellent. There's just a lot of things to like about this player. And then you add the heart, the effort that you see in this kid, and you've got a really solid pick. He's one of our favorite picks in this draft. We were wondering where he was going to go. We actually were a little higher on him, maybe too high. Maybe we got carried away with our love of the player, but either way, we think a solid pick and our favorite pick, at least mine anyway, for the Giants this year.
And it's going to make it again an exciting potential backfield with Tracy. That little combo there. I'm sure that's exciting the Giant fans already. Embo went in round 5, an offensive tackle from Purdue. Tell us a little bit about what you think about this move. And he's going to play guard, I'm assuming, at this level.
Yeah, well, he's got some versatility. I mean, we like him as a potential sixth man in the offensive line. You get a guy go down at tackle, he can play there. That's not where I would want to work him primarily because he's a little bit short-armed. He's a little bit undersized for what you look for typically in a tackle, but he's been a successful, tackle, and he's a good player. He's another high effort player, physical. I mean, a guy who does offensive line for us really likes him. He's seen him a lot, and he actually had him a little bit higher than the Giants took him. But again, this is a guy, a good effort player, high character. A guy that will work very hard. He's got a good chance of starting as a guard, but if not, he's going to be a terrific backup, a terrific sixth man, so to speak, that you can play along the offensive line.
And the Giants can use as many of those guys as possible because that's still, just looking at their depth chart, I still believe that is the biggest question on their entire team is that offensive line, especially at center. I know Ryan talked about how Schmitz hasn't been impressing so far in his first couple of seasons. So we'll talk more about that with Ryan later. The 7th round, the Giants added a couple of kids, including tight end Thomas Fidone from Nebraska. What do you think about, does this kid have a realistic chance to make the team?
Well, he's an undersized tight end. I think his best bet is to be to work real hard to get to be a second tight end. He's not a great blocker. He's a decent receiver. He's a relatively good route runner with good hands. But again, as far as he's been an attached tight end. He's been a slot as well. So he's going to give you some versatility there. He's going to have to develop his blocking skill to play as an attached tight end. So we're not 100% sure where that's going to go. But as a receiver, he's got a chance.
And then their final pick is Corey Black. I believe we had him as a UDFA. prospect. So we didn't have a report on him, but he was in the guide. What are the Giants getting with Corey Black?
Well, they're getting a guy that's a solid off-man defender with reasonably good technique. He's a twitchy kid. He's got good speed. He's inconsistent. He's got a lot of penalties in his back pocket. His press technique needs work. He'll give up leverage at the line, and he has not been a great zone defender. There's been some inconsistencies in route recognition and things like that. He's not the biggest kid either, but he is fast. He's got really good speed, and he's a developmental player. Probably special teams is his best bet as far as making the team is concerned. But in a year where the corners were a little suspect overall, there was a lot of them. A lot of guys with skill sets that were very similar. So, as far as us ranking these guys lower, it's what you like. And these guys look at every corner. They evaluate them in and out. We've got our list of maybe about 40 guys that we put draftable grades, not potentially draftable grades. Not all got drafted, obviously. And some of the guys that were our UDFAs that we didn't write reports on did. So that's par for the course.
Okay. Then I just want to get your perspective on the free agents. Speaking of the free agents, let's see. The ones that stick out to me, Makari Page, obviously, so I'm a Michigan guy. I heard a lot of positive things about when he made the switch to nickel, that he actually played better at nickel, but not a whole lot of experience. Were there anybody here on defense, any of these free agents that stick out at all that Giant fans should maybe keep their eye on?
Well, again, give me the list.
Trace Ford, RJ Delaney, Tommy McCormick, and O'Donnell Fortune.
Yeah, Fortune is a guy that we think has a chance.
Okay.
The other guys, I'd be surprised.
Okay. Offensively, there is one that does stick out, a couple actually, in that wide receiver. Antoine Wells Jr., who had a pretty productive college career. Maybe a little bit more was expected from him, but he played big-time SEC football. And Bo Collins, went from Clemson to Notre Dame, so he played in a lot of big games, obviously, this past season. What do you think, especially about Wells? Because I think we had him as high as a 5th-round grade.
Yeah, our guy that does receivers really likes him. They like the speed. They like, he's a decent, burst receiver. That he's definitely got a chance, and this was a good receiver. This was a good year for receivers in terms of the depth of the class. But Wells he's got a chance for sure.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes with you before RJ Ochoa pops in to talk a little bit about that big Cowboys-Steelers trade. So let's go over your top value plays as far as top value choices in the draft, and we're going to start in order. So we're going to go in round 2 with Luther Burden going to the Chicago Bears, pick 7 of round 2. It would not have been a surprise if Burden, maybe a few months ago or maybe last year, especially before last season, a lot of people thought maybe he could have been a top 10 or top 15 pick.
Yeah. In fact, you go back to last year, talking with Missouri people and talking with some NFL people as well, they said this could be a top 5 pick. That's how far he fell in the draft. Reasons for that, he didn't have the production that he had the year before. There were some, hiccups in terms of route running. There were some questions about his effort, possibly in certain games. So there were some things that came up about him, and he didn't necessarily, from what we're hearing, answer the questions all that well, and in his interviews. But you look at the tape, turn it on, look at the player. He's got terrific run after catch. He's a guy that he's got running back skills in the open field, and he's a great slot receiver. So there's a couple reasons why we think he fell. The stuff that we don't know about, the conjecture aside, he's a slot receiver. He's got some limitations. You're not going to play him outside. So some teams needs, we thought the Green Bay Packers, this is a team that needs a receiver really bad. But from what we understand, he was not even going to be a consideration. They were going to go in a different direction if Golden wasn't there. That was the guy they had targeted, and they thought they were going to have to trade up to get him. And Burden was not a guy because they didn't need a slot receiver. And so he's got a specific skill set. And quite honestly, for the Bears, it was a luxury pick in a lot of ways because they had taken a tight end that's going to provide 12 personnel and a guy that can play slot receiver, a big slot receiver. And you're going to see the Bears probably in a lot of 12 personnel this year. And Burden, we kind of, a lot of people scratch their heads on the pick because do they really need this guy with the receiving room they have? And there are some people think, well, hey, you're going to be a lot more versatile. And obviously the Bears definitely love the skill set, and he was just too good to pass up, bottom line. And he is going to be an impact player, we feel, in the NFL.
I mean, just taking a look at what Bears fans are, I'm sure, excited about now. We have DJ Moore, Adunze, Burden, Loveland. They've added the veterans on the offensive line. I believe Kyle Monangai is going to get a lot of snaps for the Bears in that backfield because he's underrated in the 7th round. I should know. I'm a Rutgers fan, and I know Rutgers running backs pretty well. We saw what happened with Kansas City and Pacheco a few years ago, and I think we'll get to see the same thing from Monangai with the Bears. So Ben Johnson's they've done a terrific job. And
they wanted offense, but I'll tell you what, there's not everybody's in love with the pick. I'll be honest with you. I'm in Chicago area, so.
Oh, okay.
So there are people that are concerned that luxury pick.
Okay.
And these are some football people that they still need to address up front. They still need to address edge rusher a little bit better than they did. So, and I can understand that point of view, but I also understand he was too good to pass up.
It was almost like they decided, we've got to get this kid, Caleb. He's our guy. We've got to get the best out of him as fast as possible so we don't lose him. So we're going to just attack the offense this season. Next season, we'll worry about the defense. That's what it looked like to me they did this offseason, which I can't blame them for it. So
they know what's going on in their room, and they know what the head coach wants. They're going to be better offensively. I'll be shocked if they're not. Let's put it that way.
Big surprise. The Baltimore Ravens wound up with a value pick. Isn't that normal? They even got a value pick in round 1, but in round 2, they wind up picking up Mike Green, and they get him with pick number 27. This was almost a 3rd round pickup for a kid that could have easily went in the top 20 that we thought. That could have been his high mark. But I guess there was the rumors, I guess. I'm assuming that was what put him down all the way to was almost a 3rd round regarding the assault charges and things of that nature. But Ravens, we know they're a stickler for this kind of thing. We just saw what happened with Tucker. They're usually pretty hard-nosed about these kind of things. And if anybody's going to do their homework on this, it's the Ravens.
Yeah, and boy, you're right about Starks. We could mention him too as a value pick because we had top 10 grade on this kid.
Yeah,
but there again, safety is those guys tend to fall a little bit because it's not a prime position on the defense. But the way the Ravens like to play, that just fits so well into what they want to do. But anyway, getting back to Green, he is a guy that we really like. We think he's a smart kid, very good football IQ. His techniques are tremendous. He's got a plan, a pass rush plan. His speed to pressure rate is terrific. He's not the quickest off the ball, but he is not slow off the ball. Let's put it that way. But it's what he does after that first step that is so elite and what makes him what we felt was a 1st round pick. Why he wasn't a 1st round pick, and I do know the Ravens did their homework on this guy, probably has to do with the rumors and the allegations that are out there. Those things teams are very sensitive about. And, I believe the Ravens check that out pretty carefully because, there's still a lot of stuff out there that, is rumor and innuendo that you have to be careful of. So, I trust the Ravens, and I think they got a great pick there.
And one of the biggest value picks, no question about it, is happened with Arizona when the Cardinals. First of all, you take a look at what they were able to do early on with Walter Nolan. We know how highly we regard him, but then to be able to get Will Johnson in the 2nd round with pick 15, just because there's some injury concerns, and we get that. But this kid, I mean, this is a top 5 talent as far as the corner position. This is an elite corner prospect, and they were able to get him in round 2.
Yeah, and I think the injury history is the reason. And there is an injury history there that you have to really look back. The last 3 seasons, there's been stuff that's been going on. Turf toe, shoulder. And it affected the way he played. If you watch the last half of the season, the burst was not there. And I think some teams questioned, are we going to get a guy that is going to be fit? Is he going to be able to play? Because he has so far, there's been something all 3 years, and I think that's what turned some teams off. But still, second round, Will Johnson, elite corner. If this kid stays healthy, that's going to be one of the steals in the draft.
And just the names here: Nolan, Cody Simon from Ohio State, Denzel Burke from Ohio State, Jordan Birch from Oregon. I mean, these are a lot of talented kids they were able to pick up on defense, so I thought they did a pretty good job. Now we'll go to round 4 with the Buffalo Bills, and one of the more polarizing players in the entire draft for our lads being Deone Walker. And Deone Walker, there was a possibility before last season. This could have been a first-round draft pick. And, of course, we've talked endlessly about his season and the reason why his stock dropped. But the Bills get him in round 4.
Well, I understand Sean McDermott, they know what they're doing with defensive linemen over there. So this is a great pick for Buffalo, we feel. And, I know people that have said that and if former NFL coaches says, hey, I would love to coach this kid. His tools are tremendous. What happened to him this year? There is some speculation, and I've from pretty good sources that there was some back problems. And if you watch him get down in his stance at the Senior Bowl, you can see there was still something there. I give him a lot of credit for playing through whatever he had to play through this year. But there was definitely a drop-off in performance. He tended to play upright, which was a little bit of a weakness before. But you could still see flashes of what you saw in 2023 video. And so enough so that he wasn't going to drop, out of the draft, and the Buffalo Bills, who use a defensive line rotation, they'll play 8 guys on defense in that line. And Deone Walker will be a great fit as a 3 technique, possibly a 1 technique, probably a 1, quite a bit of the time, in that scheme. And, they're not going to ask him to play every snap. He's going to be a rotational player, and he'll probably be a successful rotational player.
And then the final pick that you wanted to talk about regarding top value players went in round 5. And another team that I guess we shouldn't be a surprise, Les Snead, one of the better general managers in the NFL, picking up Chris Paul Jr., round 5, pick 36. And with their need for another inside linebacker, I mean, they must have just done cartwheels to say, we get this kid in round 5.
Well, usually the third day of the draft for me is when I start to get some insight into what these teams are thinking. I talk to some people that are, that I kind of work with a little bit, and you start to, see, okay, you start to see, well, why did this guy fall? Well, and one of the things is that Chris Paul Jr., I was told, was being targeted by several teams in the 5th round. And the reason is that he fell is size. It strictly has to do with lack of length. Some teams were concerned that his ability to tackle in space is going to be inhibited by short arms. His wingspan differential is not bad. So, that doesn't bother me, but some teams were turned off by that, and that's why he dropped. There were some other linebackers that fell off the board a little sooner than expected, that in terms of the type, because teams look at a type of player. Chris Paul Jr., we had a 3rd-round grade on him. We think he's a technician. He's about as good as it gets. He's a 3-down type linebacker. He's excellent in coverage. He's got good zone skills. He's got great instincts, chase ability. He can get off blocks, and he can get to the football. A good downhill player. So we think the Rams got a great pick there, and a guy that was a Butkus Award semifinalist. And understand that these guys that are on the Butkus committee, I know some of them, they work very, very hard at their selections. And so, he was right there, as far as a football player. And we really like them a lot, and we think they got a great pick.
Before I let you go, John, and again, RJ Ochoa is going to be joining us here in the next couple of minutes. I have to ask you because hopefully I'm going to be able to talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football real soon. I'm sure I will. But because we're talking Dallas Cowboys part of the trade here in just a minute or two. But Will Howard, I have to ask you about Will Howard before I let you go. I know there was a lot of knock on him regarding the combine and all that, but for the Pittsburgh Steelers to get Will Howard in round 6, especially with their quarterback room, the way it looks right now, I mean, tell me about that. I mean, can't you see, isn't it possible? Can't you see Will Howard being the starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2026?
Yes, yeah, for sure. I like Will Howard a lot. Dave and I have talked about him a lot. There's some concerns. He's got some inconsistency. He put together a terrific stretch down the line, the last games in the playoffs for Ohio State, where he really looked like a guy. But then you got to look at the big picture.
Sure.
He didn't do that earlier, and he showed some of the inconsistencies. The combine does not bother me because guys running around in their underwear, throwing footballs to guys they're not used to throwing to, that is, something that, I don't get excited about the workouts, but I am excited about watching the full body of work, and I know there's inconsistency in his performance. But I also saw what he did down the stretch and saw what he could become. He can become a very good quarterback, we feel. And Pittsburgh, we think that could be a potential steal in the draft. And maybe not. Maybe, Pittsburgh's got some work to do with this guy in terms of turning him into that guy.
Sure.
Quarterback. So you don't know. Quarterbacks, you never know what you've got in a quarterback till you get him in your room. When he's in the quarterback room and you got a chance to work with him as a coach, now you get to know what he is all about. There's no agents dealing with you. There's no interviews that are, they're going to tell you
not
what
protected.
You want to hear.
Nope.
It's a completely different world once you get them in the room, and so that's when you find out. So we won't know either. So we can only speculate.
That's it. But hey, it wasn't like it was a top day 1 or day 2 pick. It was round 6.
It could be a great pick.
Absolutely,
it could be a great pick.
And big surprise, it comes from an organization like the Pittsburgh Steelers, if that were to happen. But that's the NFL, and that's why the great franchises continue to be great all the time. It starts at the top, and that's the same thing here at Ourlads, because it starts at the top with our top scout here, Jon Cooper. John, I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Okay, thank you for having me.
You got it. All right, so that's Jon Cooper. Again, Ourlads.com, Associate General Manager, Pro Scout. He's done loads of interviews you can find on social media. Just type in the name Jon Cooper Ourlads, and rest assured, he's got tons of pre-draft, and I'm sure he's already done a bunch of post-draft interviews. So if maybe you're lucky enough that he's been on one of your favorite programs for your top team. All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the Dallas Cowboys. Ryan Dunleavy is going to be joining us in about 10 or 15 minutes as we talk New York Giants and their draft class from the New York Post. But let's now introduce RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com back to the show. We just spoke to him very short while ago. How's it going, RJ?
Doing great, Greg. Good to be with you. Fun times, certainly.
Yeah, because the one thing that we talked about more than anything with the Cowboys draft and what they did not accomplish was that wide receiver room. But there was a plan, I guess, all along.
Yeah, I mean, if you allow yourself to use reverse hindsight, and I don't see why you shouldn't right now, it seems obvious that the Cowboys knew they had a lever to pull. If they didn't, walk away with a receiver, if the right opportunity didn't present itself. And that lever was George Pickens. And again, it's hard to fully equate things, but one of the people that you and I talked a lot about the last time we spoke was Savon Ravel, the Cowboys' 3rd-round draft pick out of East Carolina. If you presume that was kind of the price tag on Pickens, that Pittsburgh really did want a day 2 pick, you're looking at Dallas not having Ravel. Or you're looking at Dallas forcing something at that 76th overall pick. Just, when that day began, that second day of the draft, there were a lot of people who, were kind of crossing their fingers that somebody like Luther Burden was going to make it to 44, where Dallas was picking in the 2nd round. But that didn't happen. And so the value just never made sense. And again, you and I talked about this, especially with those top 100 picks. The Cowboys just focused on getting the maximum value that they possibly could. And that left them shy at wide receiver. And on Wednesday, they took care of that.
So what's the overall response from the fan base and the media, local media?
I think I leaned a little bit more negative than most people, and I caught some flack from that from Cowboys fans. There's been enough that's happened this offseason that they're suddenly willing to defend things that the front office has done again, which ultimately is a nice thing.
Right.
The pros and cons of this are incredibly obvious in my estimation. I don't think there's any deep thinking going on here. The pros are he's an extraordinarily talented player, and if this works, you're pairing him with CeeDee Lamb, and you might truly have one of the best wide receiver duos in the NFL. He raises the floor for Dak Prescott, for CeeDee, for Jake Ferguson. I mean, ramifications in a positive sense are very obvious, but can you keep him in line? Now, he, to be very clear, is not somebody who has had any run-ins with the law. He's not a delinquent. That's important to contextualize.
True.
He's just been kind of annoying. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's a factor. And there are a lot of pieces of low-hanging fruit on the annoying tree when you play for the Dallas Cowboys. And so, can he avoid those? Several people have in the past, but others haven't. And that ultimately, we're still a couple months out from training camp, obviously, but when you ultimately I think every season can be defined for every team by a matter of 2 to 3 questions, whether X and Y happen. And for Dallas, it's going to be whether or not they can get George Pickens to focus and play ball. And if they can, then, you can totally talk about them in a serious way.
What's the contract situation with Pickens? How does that, and the cap, and how does that work for the Cowboys?
They can absorb him fine and fully. There's no drama about that, in the here and now. I'd say that's part of the cons in my mind, more from a long-term standpoint. He is a second-round draft pick in 2022, or was, and that means that this is the final year of his rookie deal, and that means he's eligible for a contract extension. And I don't have to tell you that this is not a team that handles that kind of situation well. And so, to be very clear, if I had been the person, in charge of, putting the 2 keys in and turning them and pressing the master buttons, I would not have done this. But okay, you did. So now let's figure out the most logical path forward. And to me, we'll give this man a contract extension right now. Like, you want to go down this rabbit hole? Great. Yeah. Well, let's put on the hazmat suit and let's be ready for this. And so I think it would be a mistake, because they obviously last year dragged out the Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb situations. They're currently dragging out the Micah Parsons situation. They're currently not getting ahead of the Deron Bland or Tyler Smith situations. And so you're now adding another variable. We can, maybe this is reaching a teeny tiny bit, but we can sort of, assume or take away that yesterday Micah Parsons got more leverage, specifically because the man who represents George Pickens is David Mulugeta, who is the agent whose name Jerry Jones claimed to not know. And so you've just added another ball in the air, is really where I kind of come down. And you're not a team who can juggle really at all. So I have hesitations and concerns as to whether or not they can handle it, whether they can land this plane. But if they do, I'll be the first person to, go down to the, meat market, buy, 30 pounds of crow and smoke it on my pit boss and serve it up to everybody.
That's right. That's the way I like to do it too. Is if there's something that it's like you're hedging your bet, which especially if you're taking a side that you believe in, no question about it. But sometimes when you hedge your bet that way, and like you said, if you have to eat crow, it's actually a good thing, because that means something good is happening to the team you're covering. So
and
I get
again,
that.
I want to be clear. They are a much better football team today. And this was kind of the lone glaring hole that they had on their roster. You could argue from the beginning of the offseason, and you can argue that the free agency class wasn't really, a strong one at the wide receiver position. I do stand by that if Stephon Diggs had not torn his ACL last year, he would be a Cowboy. I do think the Cowboys would have united him with his brother. I think that was kind of the hope when Houston redid his deal and he had the 1 year remaining a year ago. But the cards just didn't fall that way. And then I think if Ted McMillan had fallen to them at 12, they draft him, and we're not having this conversation. But he didn't. And so in that vein, I applaud them genuinely for being willing to be creative and spontaneous and cunning and daring, because these things are that. And, so many people say things like, oh, well, if the Eagles had executed this trade, we'd all be lauding it. And that's true, because they've earned that benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
They have very much proven that they can do things like this and yield positive returns. I simply have questions whether or not Dallas can do it right now.
So was your biggest criticism the fact that you was the locker room? Was it the third round pick, which is a valuable pick that you got to give up, and maybe he doesn't even resign and he's not on the team next year? Now you've given up draft picks for Mingo and Pickens, and maybe they don't work out, and these are valuable picks. What specifically was it that you were most critical about?
I think it's the locker room thing. Now, I don't like this doesn't matter to me. I'm not, of the mindset you have to build your team with, not whatever you want to call them, choir boys, Boy Scouts, whatever.
Yeah, sure.
But the Cowboys had very, very clearly, and we talked about this, drafted team captains and leaders. And so you're very, very obviously going down this one road. And again, I don't want to paint George Pickens in a poor light. Like has not been in literal trouble. These things are, nuisances. They're just, you don't want them on your football team. Can they handle that? Because this is a team that, for lack of a better way to put it, when the lights get bright, when the attention gets bigger, they all tend to fold. And so can you inject this variable? Do you trust the leadership of Dak Prescott and Brian Schottenheimer that much? I can buy that. I can understand that. I can swallow that. That makes sense. The draft pick is costly. I do think that not enough people are willing to say that. I think some of it is because it's so far from now. It feels like, that's a 2026 third round. That's like 5 years from now. We don't have to worry about that, today.
Sure.
But what I will offer is the general counter to that when you bring this up is, they're going to get a third or fourth round comp pick if he walks in free agency. Fine, maybe, but that wouldn't be until 2027. And even then, now you're presuming, we all have to presume that they're not going to be active in free agency, like in order to be eligible for that compensatory pick. So, that might happen, but you can't dangle the positive elements of a carrot and not acknowledge the negative ones. It's really where I come down.
Before I let you go, since the last time I spoke to you, so was there anybody, as far as any of these college free agents that you've heard anything? Because I know you didn't have a lot of information at that point. I don't know if there was anything you've heard since then regarding anybody to keep an eye on. And also, are the Cowboys pretty much set with going into the regular season with Joe Milton as their number 2 quarterback?
As far as the UDFAs are concerned, I know you talked about Trayshawn Holden yesterday, kind of, dampens that a little bit, just because, I mean, you can, without really stretching, come up with 5 receivers on their team. You've got CD, George Pickens, Jalen Tolbert will make the roster in all certainty. There's no way Jonathan Mingo's not going to make the roster, and Kevontae Turpin. So right now we're at 5. And so does Trayshawn Holden beat out Jalen Brooks, who, granted it's been 2 years, but was a draft pick, Ryan Flournoy, who was a draft pick? I mean, that's a bit of an uphill battle. I would have kind of, put it in the bank that they were going to carry a 6th UDFA receiver, but now that seems a much more difficult proposition outside of some sort of injury situation, obviously. So it's difficult to know who the guy's going to be in terms of undrafted free agency at this point still.
Okay.
And yeah, I think Joe Milton is the guy. And I think Joe Milton kind of is somewhat in the George Pickens area of how they've built their roster, in that they are clearly taking some risks because, I think it's a bit of an unfair picture to paint, but Dak has missed time in 4 of his last 5 years. And so there is an argument to be made, if you have to have a dude play a game or 3 games, that you want the athletic explosiveness that somebody like Joe Milton offers. There's that school of thought versus the Cooper Rush school of thought, somebody who knows your system and will just, drive the bus or whatever. But I think they're banking on, hey, if we've got to thread a needle, we're comfortable taking this risk so that we can, play it safe elsewhere, or whatever the case may be.
All right. Well, hey, best of luck. I mean, I'm a Michigan fan, so I know a whole lot about Joe Milton and what he brings to the table, and I also know a whole lot of what he doesn't. And hey, I hope he's just improved. I've seen some of the same Joe Milton last year in the preseason and such that I've seen at Michigan, and I've also at both sides. We know the kid's got probably one of the strongest arms in the game. But I don't know if I would trust him. Like you said, maybe a game, maybe he could do that. And he's got the talent to maybe come out and have a good game. But yeah, I don't think you want Joe Milton right now out there for 3, 4, 5 games like Cooper Rush, like you said. But hey, you never know. I obviously wish the best of luck with all these young quarterbacks, because the NFL can use a lot of talent at that position. And I hope that if he does get his chance, he performs well. All right. So what are you working on over at bloggingtheboys.com? We'll have a link in the description, obviously, of this video, so you can check out everything that RJ does at the website. Obviously, the Pickens deal, that's got to be the big news.
Yeah, I mean, we're just leaning all the way into this at this point, and leaning into several matters of it, because it is, not every trade or acquisition or draft pick is universal. Not everyone is debated, but this is one of those where I do think there's room for a wide ranging discussion, and so we're just trying to explore all avenues of that. Meet in the middle on certain points, and now figuring out whether this roster because this is clearly the finishing, final touch on the roster over the offseason, whether they did enough, whether they lived up to, being selectively aggressive or whatever you want to call it. So it is at the very least, and I'll leave on this note. I will take this 1,000,000 times out of 1,000,000 relative to last year. Like this is fun. Like it may not be what I would have done, but it is so fun. I mean, like last night, my family and I, we kind of got in a pickle, and we had to get McDonald's for dinner, and I got a 20-piece nugget meal, and I felt horrible after, but like
I can imagine
it was still awesome. Like I would still do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so this is that. Like I would have much rather done that than like, gotten home and like baked chicken. You know what I mean? So
sure.
So sometimes it's
well, you covered the team.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, last season, like you said, it was boring. Nothing was going on.
Exactly. Like we're at a party, the music's on, there's free food and free drink. Like, no reason to complain that they don't have the exact beer on tap or on draft that you would have preferred.
And you never know. You never know how it's going to work out, because there is a chance it works out. So that's the thing that you didn't have last year. So I completely understand that, and that gets everybody talking, like you said. So it should be a fun off season for the Cowboys. Obviously, we'll talk more. I don't think there's going to be any more news that we'll need to talk to you before training camp. But if there is, we look forward to doing that. Thanks a lot, RJ, as always.
Sounds good, Greg. Have a good one.
You too. All right. So again, that's RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys. And we're going to continue to talk some New York Giant football here in a couple of minutes or maybe even sooner, when we get Ryan Dunleavy on from the New York Post. So I want to remind everybody that you can still order a draft guide from Ourlads. I believe we still have a few of them left. I know they were going really, really fast. But let's just say that the guide is not available. You know what? You can get the PDF. And the PDF version is still available, of course. And you can order the PDF version right now, and then you'll have it in your inbox 2 seconds later. So if you haven't already ordered the guide or the PDF version, go ahead and do that. And this is what you get. I mean, look at all these. Of course, I've highlighted a whole bunch of stuff, but look at all these scouting reports, man. I mean, just tons of scouting reports and information on the draft and your favorite team to follow, including all these draft picks that we just spoke about regarding the New York Giants with Jon Cooper, Associate General Manager. But right now, we're going to go back to talking about the New York Giants, and we're going to welcome in Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post. How's it going, Ryan?
What's up, Greg? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I hear that there's some interesting talk in social media going on about how Ryan Dunleavy is a kiss ass, about how Ryan Dunleavy is putting the New York Giants draft so high that he must just be a homer. He's got the inside track to maybe a new job with the New York Giants when it opens up. But we know that that's not the case. So you really fell in love with this draft.
I've been their biggest critic for 7 years, right? So
yes.
when I actually think they did a good job, people don't know how to react to it. No, I think that somebody actually on Twitter or email actually said, like, I thought I was optimistic about it, but once you were optimistic about it, I was like, they must have really done a good job if he believes it. No, I loved everything they did, Greg. I thought two different things. One, the process I thought they nailed. So like 6 years ago, Dave Gettleman had 2 first-round draft picks and panicked into taking Daniel Jones with the number 6 overall pick. Couldn't wait. Could have taken Josh Hines Allen, the pass rusher from the Jaguars, at 6, and then tried to either get Daniel Jones at 17 or trade up to get Daniel Jones at 17. And 6 years later, I can't help but think about the discourse around Daniel Jones and how different it would be if he was the second of the 2 first-round picks and he was looked at as a late first-rounder rather than the number 6 overall pick, and the enormous expectations that carried. Gettleman couldn't do it, and Shane had the fortitude to pick the best overall player, Abdul Carter, and then wait out. He knew the quarterback that his head coach wanted, Jackson Dart, and he waited out, and he played a little game of chicken with the Steelers, and he won because the Steelers didn't take the quarterback. He would have had a lot of egg on his face if they did. And then he got his guy at the 25th overall pick, and all he had to give up was 2 third-round picks. And that's a negligible gain to get a quarterback. If Jackson Dart works out, you're going to say it's the trade of the century. And if he doesn't, you're going to say you can move on from him in 2 or 3 years. You don't have to stick with them for 6 years because all you gave up is two third-round picks. Whereas if you had taken the quarterback at 3rd overall, you know, it's a franchise-changing decision where he has to be Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, because even if you just look at the draft, and I think this is important for us to do anytime, because Cowboys are a prime example. I wasn't sure that picking a guard with the 12th pick in the draft was very smart. I thought they got off to a bad start. But then when I looked at their draft after day 2 or day 3, I was like, well, you should just care about what the players are generally, as long as the players do a good job. And that's what I'm seeing with the Giants here with their first 4 picks specifically, and maybe even 5, because we know they need some help on the offensive line. But Scadaboo, Alexander, Dart, and Carter, I think the Giant fans, I'm sure, of course, I'm not in New York, but I got to believe a lot of them are very excited about that.
I think Giants fans are thrilled about it. And obviously, I cover the league as a whole to a degree, and I certainly pay attention to the Cowboys because as they are, in the NFC East. And my thought is like, to what you just said on Tyler Booker, is like, if you and I were sitting here 11 years ago or 12 years ago, whatever that 2014, I think it was, you would have said the same thing. I'm not sure picking a guard at the 13th overall pick is the way to go. Well, Zach Martin became a Hall of Famer. So, like, if Tyler Booker is Zach Martin, you just pick the best player. And certainly, if it's a position of need, and the Cowboys need to rebuild their offensive line into the same offensive line that kicked the Giants' butt for 12 years, it's not that good anymore. So, and the Giants just built one of the NFL's best defensive front sevens. So, is that power balance going to shift? I mean, it's certainly overdue to shift in that within that rivalry, who dominates the line of scrimmage. But to your point, I think Giants fans are thrilled with their 4 picks. To get Dart as the 2nd first-round pick, it solves the It addresses the quarterback issue of the future. He doesn't have to play this year because Wilson and Winston are here, so he can learn behind the scenes, which is the old, Aaron Rodgers, Jordan Love, Mahomes model, which is what they really wanted to do. So they accomplished that. They got the best player available, maybe the best player in the whole draft, in Abdul Carter. And then I would say that their next 3 picks, not just 2, I would say Alexander could have been a 2nd rounder. They got atop the 3rd. I would say Scadabo could have been a 3rd rounder. They got high in the 4th. And I would say Marcus Bowe, the offensive tackle, I thought he could have been a 3rd rounder. Certainly they admitted they almost took him over Scadabo in the 4th round at 105, and then they end up getting him 50 picks later in the 5th round. So I thought they got good players at good values throughout the first 5 rounds.
Yeah, you love when that happens, and I only saying that because from, of course, my highly competitive and really serious dynasty draft leagues.
Of course,
when you have 2 picks and you go, who do I take? And then you take one and they're still there the next time around. It's like, wow, okay, I guess I would have been stupid to take him with that first pick after all. Anyway, so let's go by each pick just to kind of see how this works for the Giants. And obviously the Dart thing, I think, Mike, you hit it on the head. The thing that really sticks out to me is the fact that they have Jameis Winston backing up. Because if anything were to happen to Russell Wilson and Winston wasn't there and Jackson Dart would somehow have to play earlier than expected, that would not be good. So I think that is very smart for the New York Giants to have added Jameis Winston to that room. I do have to ask you about Dart and his personality, being, he played in SEC, and that's very tough, and we know that. But every kid, where they come from, now they're going to New York. So what do you think about Dart, and for what you've seen so far, about whether or not he can handle New York?
I actually like it. I think it's what they needed. Like Daniel Jones was, and I'm not knocking Daniel Jones, but he was a robot. Like he said all the politically correct things. He was almost trying to be Eli Manning, his former teammate. He didn't really, in front of the cameras, he didn't really show any fire. The fans always wanted to see him show more emotion. He never did. I think that the kind of bled into the locker room a little bit. There's only so much where teammates can be like, oh, he's a different guy with us than he is with you guys. Well, eventually they want to see that the front facing personality. Dart is different. Dart is fiery. Dart will get in your face. Yeah, now look, he's not going to do that as a rookie or probably even as a first-year starter in 2026, but that is in his nature to be, to have some swagger, to be what's the word I'm looking for? To be an alpha. And I think that's kind of what New York needs. Now he's going to have to earn it,
sure.
But he's going to have to earn the right to be that way. But the Giants were devoid of leadership last year after Saquon Barkley went to the Eagles. There's no question about it. I'm not expecting Dart to be that leader as a rookie third-string quarterback, but he has the personality that if he plays well when he's playing, it will quickly become his team.
Yeah, I mean, the New York area for sure. As far as the quarterback position in 2026, it would be really nice if they have success with both Fields and Dart. It would be great for the city, and really be good for the NFL too. Finally, get these New York franchises going. All right, so let's now talk about Carter and how this improves this defense tremendously, because Carter, Thibodeau, Brian Burns. And then, of course, Dexter Lawrence on the inside. There's a lot to like there.
Yeah, I mean, look, when people think of the Giants for the last 40 years, they think of defense and sacks and defensive fronts and pressure. And that's what you're going to think of with this team. Like, I couldn't tell you for the last 3-4 years what the Giants' identity was. Like, it was supposed to be in 2018, like Odell Beckham and Saquon Barkley making big plays, and then they traded Beckham and Barkley got hurt, and like they've really had no identity. Like, what do they do well? Well, now they have something they should do well. They should harass quarterbacks at a really high level. Now you're going to have to play from in front. You're going to have to be in games to do that. If you're down 20-0, no one cares what your pass rush is. But they should be towards the top of the NFL in sacks, in pressures. They should be able to get creative with some things. Carter is a versatile piece like a Michael Parsons who could blitz one play, rush one-on-one the next play, and drop into coverage the next play. So like they should be able to do some things where you're putting Burns, Thibodeau, and Carter on the field together in 3 edge packages. Bobby Okereke had a bad year last year, but he's still a good middle linebacker. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best probably the most unblockable nose tackle in the NFL. So like they should be able to have an identity up front. Yep. That's what Abdul Carter gives them.
Okay, let's now move on. By the way, Alexander. So you talked a little bit about him, and
he could be a starter. I would say Darius Alexander as a rookie could be a starter next, like right where you have Roy Robertson Harris. I would say Darius Alexander is probably the favorite to start. I mean,
wow.
That would be my guess. That's a certain, if not week 1, by week 5, because
but just still as a rotational guy in year 1 or until he could develop into a 3-down guy.
Yeah, I mean, all defensive guys are, defensive guys are all defensive line guys are rotational guys. But when I say start, I mean take the first snap and take 65% and take 65%.
Because he's the most talented guy at that position next to Dexter Lawrence.
Correct. Yeah. Yes. And he's young and he's their guy and he offers some pass rush and for sure. Yep.
Cool. All right, that's good news there. Meanwhile, we talked about a little bit Scadabutu, and we as a scouting service at Ourlads, obviously on top of Scadaboo real early, even though you had to wait for the film, you had to even be more mesmerized by his performance in the playoff game. But the fact is, and I thought Jon Cooper nailed it when he said he sort of got Mike Alstott in him. And that's the thing. He may not be the most physically gifted kid in the world, but boy, is he a physical player. And to match him up with Tyrone Tracy, again, I think Giant fans must be real excited about that combination.
The Giants as an organization and their fans love to live in the past. So I'll go back to I already made the old pass rush comparisons, and that's what it reminds me of. Carter, Thibodeau, and Burns might as well be OC, JPP, and Justin Tuck, right? It might as well be like, oh, here we go. I mean, it's hard not to look at Tyrone Tracy and Cam Scadabo and think of Brandon Jacobs and Ahmad Bradshaw. Like, it is a little bit of thunder and lightning, or like Ron Dane and Tiki Barber. And I don't want to compare anybody to Tiki Barber. He should be in the Hall of Fame. But the same thunder and lightning idea of a complimentary running back. And this is what the Giants wanted when they let Saquon Barkley go. They didn't want a 85% feature back. They wanted two cheap, young, complimentary backs. Well, now they got them. I wouldn't be surprised if Scadabo actually ends up being the lead dog in this. I certainly think he's a 3-down back who can catch passes. And again, what the Giants were missing last year, I mentioned leadership. They also are missing like an edge. They were also missing like a bully, so to speak. And that's Scadabo. He's gonna run you. He's gonna run you over. So they were certainly missing some of that. And so I think they have a good 1-2 punch there. Now, to be who I am, it makes Devin Singletary an unhappy veteran and a total waste of a contract last year. I know you didn't know at that time you were going to draft Tracy and Scadabo, but you'd like to see some foresight, and you got a big dead cap hit there with Devin Singletary, a good guy, but not one he wasn't afraid to admit that he wasn't thrilled to be backup last year. He thought he was signing to be the starter. He's going to be even less thrilled if he's the third stringer this year. So
that's right.
So, they'll count on him for veteran leadership, and he'll get his paychecks, and it's nice to have insurance, but he fumbled too much. Part of it's on him. He didn't have great ball security when he played.
Is his contract untradeable then?
Yeah, his contract's untradeable. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what it is, but there's guaranteed money on it for a third string running back. Yeah. I mean, it's hard to trade running backs with at all, period.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
All right. So, Mbo, they get in the 5th, and the good thing about him is he's got the experience at tackle, more than likely going to be a guard, but he'll be able to play both positions if required at the next level.
The Giants are starting him. The Giants are putting him at tackle. So
they are. Okay.
He might have to move to guard. You're right about the versatility. He might have to move to guard, but this week in rookie minicamp, he'll be lined up at tackle.
So are they going to give him a chance to win the starting job?
Well, no, there's no. I mean, if the tackles are healthy, the tackles are entrenched. It's Jermaine Illuminor on the right side, Andrew Thomas on the left side.
Okay.
The Giants have had a 2-year saga of trying to find a swing tackle. It was actually embarrassing that they could not. They didn't admit that Josh Azudu couldn't do it after 2023. They refused to move him to guard. They brought him back as the swing tackle in 2024. It was a disaster again. So they've just gone through so many Chris Hubbards of the world at swing tackle that they finally addressed it this year with Hudson. What's his first name? I'm looking at him on James Hudson from Cleveland is the favorite to be the swing tackle, but maybe Bo can push him, or he'll be the 4th tackle. Will they give him a chance to start? No, but they could probably give him a chance to be the swing tackle over Hudson. So I'd say those are tackles 3 and 4, and Evan Neal, the former first-round pick who busted at right tackle, is moving to guard, and I think he has a chance. I see you have him behind Bo. You should switch that. He has a chance, I think, to to challenge Greg Van Roten to be the starting right guard.
Yeah, so that's good. That's what the Giants need. By the way, they did not, as we can see, add any competition at center. Are you surprised by that, or is it just they can't?
No, because I think they look at, they're hoping Neal wins the job at right guard, and I think they're looking at Greg Van Roten as their interior swing, who could be the backup right guard, backup left guard, backup center.
Got it.
And even if he's the starting right guard, if Schmitz goes down, then you just plug in Aaron Stinney or Evan Neal at guard, and you switch Van Roten to center. So Van Roten he might be the starting right guard, but he's also the backup center.
And do you think this is it then for Schmitz? He'll get one more year, and then that'll be it. They'll have to move if he doesn't make the move.
Well, this is only his third year, right? So
yep.
he has 2 more. Like, this is his last year as an unquestioned starter.
Yeah.
They'll have him on the team next year.
Sure.
But this is his last year as an unquestioned. He's obviously been a major disappointment as a second round pick. So they have him as the unquestioned starter. Again, if he struggles next year, he'll probably be a backup, but he'll be on the team for 2 more years. Yeah.
Okay. And then in the 7th round, they get a tight end, Fedoni. Can't really block, but he's got some receiving ability. And also Corey Black, who basically, as Jon Cooper said, is all speed with Corey Black. A lot of other issues, but usually you're trying to improve your special teams back here. What have you heard so far about the team and why they drafted these 2 kids?
Fedoni impressed the tight ends coach during a private workout. That was really a position coach pick, I think. It was a former 5-star recruit, I believe, who was actually ranked higher in his recruiting class than Brock Bowers. For what you take that for what it's worth in recruiting rankings, but to the point of he was injured a lot in his first 3 years at Nebraska, played a lot the last 2 years. So they think there's some untapped potential there, kind of a flyer on a guy who has some raw ability. And to your point, the other Black's speed, they see him as a potential gunner and stuff on special teams. So.
And have you heard anything at all about the undrafted free agents? Because the one kid that we graded the highest was Antoine Wells Jr. I think we had a 5th round grade on him. Other than that, I mean, they had 6 guys at receiver that they signed.
Yeah, well, that's because they didn't do anything at receiver really in free agency or the draft. They kind of just they kept it the same top 4 receivers, which, I mean, I get it. It's fine, but they didn't really address it. So then they're trying to fill it on the back end. And also receivers are heavy special teams guys. So that's a place I think you see a lot of UFAs wind up because that's the ticket to special teams. Anton Wells or Juice Wells, he's certainly the most interesting because he played with Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. So you're just going to stick them together this weekend in rookie minicamp and, in training camp on the 3rd team offense and let them build their connection together, rework it from Ole Miss, and maybe that makes them both a little more comfortable as they transition to the NFL. I actually love that idea. Yeah. And actually the Giants are bringing in the Ole Miss center this weekend on a rookie mini camp tryout. Like, I don't know if he'll get signed or not, but again, for Jackson Dart's first weekend in the NFL, I think it's brilliant to have his old center snapping to him.
Why not? And okay, so by the way, was there any of these free agents that they signed like to a bigger deal than the rest? How everybody talks about, gave him a $500,000 rookie, free agent deal.
I think Wells got the biggest deal.
Okay.
I think Wells, Felton, and Collins. Collins is the Notre Dame kid.
Yes.
Yes. I think Wells, Felton, and Collins, 3 receivers, I think all got their biggest the biggest UFA contract. Nothing that'll blow your mind, but bigger than the rest.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right. We'll see how that pans out then for the room, and if one of those guys can wind up sticking. And other than that, it looks like they didn't do anything at all on special teams, but we talked about that. They didn't have to. So all in all, the Giants had have you looked back at the history of their drafts at all? Did you say to yourself, were you curious about what the last time you were this positive?
It was 2022 when they picked Evan Neal and Kayvon Thibodeau with top 7 picks. And everybody and again, I love their process because they were going to pick Neal 5th but they had him on the same line as Ika Makwanu. So they thought that by picking Kayvon Thibodeau first at 5, they assured themselves of getting Thibodeau, and then they were comfortable getting either Neal or Kwanu at 7. Again, smart process. Only problem is Evan Neal's not very good, even though everybody told me that he was could be the number 1 overall prospect in that class. And Kayvon Thibodeau has been a fine player, but not what you expect from a top 5 pick, not a Myles Garrett or Jadeveon Clowney or whoever you expect from Trayvon Walker, not some Aiden Hutchinson, not that kind of player. So, I loved that class, and it's turned out to be mediocre at best. So,
that's the draft.
Instant draft grades don't really mean much. I wasn't super high on their 2024 class, and it turned out to be a pretty good class, at least as rookies. So, you never really know.
Yeah, so far. So Joe Shane, I'm sure there were a lot of Giant fans of that. And we talked about it, of course, a few months ago, where they're just going to clean house and all this stuff. And now it's so far so good, but it's the off season. So we all know the old adage.
Everyone wins the off season.
You don't want to win the off season. So anyway,
everyone wins.
Yes.
Nobody got worse.
What are you up to right now at the New York Post? Is it are you working on stories right now, continuing with covering the teams, mini camp, training camp? We're still a couple months from training camp. OTAs coming up as well.
Yeah, we got mini camp this week. I'll be there tomorrow. Then after that, we have access to a couple OTAs, mandatory mini camp. I'll be out at Giants probably, I don't know, a handful, 6-7 times over the next month before they break for the summer, and plenty of stuff to write about all the new players. Plenty of stuff to dive into on Abdul Carter and on Jackson Dart and on what I think is a significantly improved roster. The only problem is I think they face the hardest schedule in the NFL. So I don't know how much the improvements will translate into the win column. They just might be a more palatable team to watch than they were.
Yeah, sure seems like it on paper, that's for sure. And obviously the quarterback position, it means everything. But the Giants still, when you talked about it, their roster was just so thin and diluted with talent that it's going to take more than one good offseason to make them a competitive playoff caliber team.
I think they've had 2, though. I think they've had 2 good off seasons. So
getting there.
Minus the disaster of losing Saquon Barkley. Since that, I think they've had a good draft and then a good off season. Let's put it that way.
That's it. Keep that going and hope that you hit it with the quarterback, because that's obviously the biggest position of all. All right, Ryan, we appreciate your time as always. I look forward to talking to you when we preview camp.
Sounds good, Greg. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right, that's Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post. And I know Ryan's a big Rutgers grad guy, so maybe he'll tune in tomorrow when we talk about Rutgers on the OFN today. We're going to have Richie O'Leary join us from Rivals, publisher over at Rivals. He also is a Rutgers analyst, and a two-prong approach to the interview. We're going to talk about Rutgers, and we are going to talk about more college football teams over the next couple of months. Trust me, this isn't just me being a homer and going to get Richie on, even though I didn't have Richie on all last season, so keep that in mind. But I wanted to also get Richie on because in the second part of our interview, we're going to talk about the college football transfer portal. So we're going to go over, of course, Rivals does a great job of updating the portal position by position on a daily basis, all of that. So we're going to find out from Richie. I've got tons of questions regarding, who were the big moves in the portal? How is it going to impact the teams? We're already seeing, you see people out there already giving early projections for college football, even though we haven't even hit camp yet. We're still a few months away from that. But hey, if we're going to do that, which we are in the next couple of weeks, whether I do it here at Ourlads or over on my channel at Proline TV, I know we need to start getting a little bit more education and a lot more background as far as the transfer portal is concerned, because this dictates everybody's roster all season now, or all in the offseason, of course. And so we're going to talk to Richie about that on tomorrow's show. And then I have no idea when we're going to get on our guest our top Pittsburgh analyst. I haven't even emailed him yet, but I'm going to do that as soon as we get off the show, Alex Kozora, and find out if we can get him on, maybe even tomorrow, to talk about the Pickens side of the Steelers. So if not, all Rutgers and all college football with the portal news on tomorrow's show. And then next week, we already have line guests. We have Cleveland Browns. Fred Greetham, I believe, is going to be with us on Monday. We have John Sheeran on to talk about the Bengals on Tuesday. I think that's it. I think that's all we have scheduled so far. So we'll start loading up the back end of the week as well. And we'll update you along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That's the best way so you don't miss any of these videos. John, by the way, Jon Cooper is definitely going to be creating some more videos regarding the players that were drafted. Same thing with Dave Syvertson. We're going to get Dave on here real soon to get his perspective. I know he's heavily he puts the newsletters together several days a week. So we'll have a link in the description for that. We'll have a link in the description for the Insider, which helps you get the newsletter. And also it helps you to eliminate the ads on the website at Ourlads.com. So that's why you want to order the Ourlads Insider. So check that out. And don't forget, even if you don't want to wait any longer for the draft guide, or somehow if you try to order this draft guide and they say, hey, we're out of it, the PDF version, it's going to be available forever. So we're not ever going to be out of that. So if you want to order the PDF version, it'll be in your inbox right away. So I want to thank Jon Cooper, Associate General Manager from Ourlads, for joining us. Also, of course, Ryan Dunleavy from the New York Post, and RJ Ochoa from bloggingtheboys.com. Let us know what you think about these interviews. Let us know what's on your mind, questions, comments. I can just forward them off to RJ, Ryan. I can forward them off to John and get their response and get back to you regarding what they have to say. And anytime we do a live program, just keep that in mind. You can join us. We appreciate the comments and the banter back and forth. So I'm out of here. Greg DePalma, thanks for tuning in. Don't forget, as I said, you can join me here at Ourlads.com or over on my other channel at Proline TV. And we'll see you next time on the Ourlads Football Network.